I never thought I would see that side of my fiancé in the emergency room hallway. My name is Jenny Liu and I live and work in Los Angeles. My fiancé Michael Chen and I have been together for 3 years. In 3 years and more than 1,000 days and nights, we have never had a quarrel. Not because we were a perfect match, but because of Michael, who had almost no emotions. No matter what I do or say, even if it is the occasional unreasonable trouble, he always follows me and gently tells me, "Jenny, you are right." My parents, my friends, everyone praises me for my good taste. They said that in today's society, men with stable emotions and gentle personalities are too scarce, so I must take advantage of them. I also always thought that Michael had such a character. He is a few years older than me, has his own company, is mature, sensible and stable. So, even if there is an uneasy thought that occasionally flashes through my heart, does he love me or not? This idea will soon be convinced by myself. That's the kind of person he is, isn't he? He's just not good at expressing himself. Until that day. There was a rare blizzard in Los Angeles that day. I was walking carefully on the road, but the soles of my feet slipped and I fell heavily to the ground. There was a sharp pain in my wrist, and it swelled up at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was a kind person who called an ambulance and took me to the hospital. The emergency room was noisy, filled with groans of pain and hurried footsteps. I was put on a stretcher and waited for the doctor to check me. Just as I was being pushed around a corner in the corridor, I saw him. My fiancé, Michael. He was standing at the other end of the corridor, his back to me, but I recognized his back at a glance. I subconsciously wanted to call him and tell him I was here. But before the words came out, I saw the woman standing opposite him. The woman was thin, pale, wearing a hospital gown, and looked extremely frail. And Michael, the Michael who was always as calm as water and unruffled in front of me, seemed to be a completely different person at this moment. He held the woman's shoulders tightly with both hands, and his body was shaking slightly. He shouted at her, with anger, fear and distress in his voice that I had never heard before. "You promised me that you would take good care of yourself. Have you forgotten your physical condition? Is he that good? In order to give him a child, you even risked your life?" The last thing I saw before being pushed into the emergency room was Michael using all his strength to pull the woman into his arms. His face was buried in her shoulder, and I could clearly see a tear sliding down the side of his face. Those tears, like a red-hot iron, burned hard on my heart. When the doctor was treating my broken wrist, he praised me as the most pain-tolerant young girl he had ever seen. Because I haven't said a word since I came in until now. I twitched the corner of my mouth, trying to respond to him with a smile, but my dry and flaky lips split open several times in an instant, and the smell of blood filled my mouth. This sting reminded me of my first kiss with Michael. That was my initiative. I was too nervous and couldn't control my strength, which broke his lip. I was at a loss and apologized profusely, but he just gently held me in his arms and said it didn't matter. That hug was once the warmest scene in my memory. But now, it overlaps with the scene I saw half an hour ago, and is torn apart again. It was obviously a hug from the same person. But when he held different women, the difference was so obvious. I looked at my swollen wrist and suddenly burst into tears. It's not painful, the fractured area does hurt, but compared with the swelling pain in the heart that is torn apart by life, it is not worth mentioning at all. The doctor was startled by my sudden tears and joked, "Hey, girl, I was complimenting you just now. Why are you crying all of a sudden?" I opened my mouth and finally managed to squeeze out one sentence. I was slow to react. I only feel the pain now. I cried because I remembered so many things. I remembered a time before when one of my clients showed favor to me and gave me a large bouquet of flowers in front of many people. When Michael found out, he wasn't angry at all. I asked him if he was jealous, and he just smiled and said, "This shows that my Jenny is very charming. What is there to be jealous of?" I remembered that last year I went to New York on a business trip for more than a month. Because of the time difference and being too busy with projects, Michael and I didn't even have a phone call except for a few text messages occasionally. My colleague quarreled with her boyfriend over video every day. After the quarrel, we got back together and our relationship got better and better. After I came back, I asked Michael, "Why don't you check on me every day and call me like other boyfriends do?" He answered me without thinking, "You are so busy, I'm afraid of disturbing your rest. Besides, I trust you." Trust. I understand now that that is not trust, it is not caring. When my parents rushed to the hospital, I was staring out the window in a daze. When they saw me lying alone on the hospital bed, my mother asked in surprise, "Where's Michael? Isn't his company not far from here? Why is it slower than us?" I said hoarsely, "I didn't tell him." Mom nodded understandingly, "That's fine. I heard from his mother that Michael has been working overtime every day to prepare for your wedding and honeymoon. Don't tell him yet, so as not to distract him. I'd say he's probably in this hospital. But when the words came to my lips, I couldn't say them out. How do I tell my parents? Tell them that the soon-to-be son-in-law whom they always praise everyone may have never liked their daughter from beginning to end? His emotional stability that I'm so proud of is not his nature at all? He has emotions, he gets angry, sheds tears, and loses control. It's just a pity that I'm not the one who can make him feel emotional. Seeing that I didn't speak, my mother thought that I was uncomfortable with the wound and ran to find a doctor. Dad and I were the only ones left in the ward. Dad is a man of few words but very attentive. He asked me gently, Lele, did you have a fight with Michael? Seeing the worry in my father's eyes, I couldn't bear it anymore. I pursed my lips and burst into tears. Dad, I don't want to marry Michael anymore. Before I could say why, my mother followed the doctor through the door. At this moment, through the glass window of the ward, I happened to see Michael supporting the woman walking down the corridor. My mother has the habit of posting on moments to record her life. So not long after they arrived at the hospital, Michael's mother, my future mother-in-law, hurried over. She didn't see Michael when she entered the door, so she asked strangely, where is Michael? Mom explained quickly, Lele is afraid that it will affect his work, so I haven't told him yet. Michael's mother's expression immediately changed. She had a fiery personality. She immediately took out her mobile phone and said, work is not as important as Lele. I'll call him now. The phone rang for a long time before it was picked up. Michael's mother used to use the speakerphone, so we all clearly heard a woman's voice coming from the other side. Hello, Aunt. Michael forgot to bring his mobile phone when he went out. What can I do for you? The atmosphere in the ward suddenly solidified. I watched all this with a blank expression, while my mother sat beside my bed with a puzzled look on her face, staring at the phone. Dad seemed to have realized something. He looked at me, then at Michael's mother, and his face suddenly darkened. Michael's mother, as if she had forgotten to turn on the speakerphone, asked in disbelief, Sarah? Is it Sarah's song? The other person paused for a moment, and when he spoke again, there was a hint of smile in his voice. It's me, Auntie, so you still remember me. Sarah's song. I've seen this name in Michael's study. I asked him who this person was and why he still kept the postcard he sent. He threw the postcard into the trash can in front of me and said without changing his face, a common friend who has not been in contact for a long time. Ha, ordinary friends. Can an ordinary friend make his mother so familiar with the voice? Can an ordinary friend make him lose control of his emotions and cry in public? Michael's mother finally came to her senses and hung up the phone in a hurry. She looked embarrassed, but she had to force out a smile and said to me, Jenny, don't get me wrong, this is one of Michael's friends, they may be talking about work. I looked into her eyes, hesitated for a moment, and then decided to make it clear, she is Michael's ex-girlfriend, right? I just saw them. I recounted the scene I saw in the corridor in detail. Then, I looked into her eyes and said very calmly, Auntie, just cancel the wedding before the invitations are sent out. Michael's mother immediately refused. No. Jenny, there must be a misunderstanding here. I don't deny that Sarah and Michael had a relationship, but that's all in the past. You can't make impulsive decisions. I'll ask Michael to explain it to you right away. Before she finished speaking, her cell phone rang. Judging from her expression, it should be Michael calling. Sure enough, as soon as the call was connected, she sternly scolded, Michael, I don't care what you are doing now. Get out of here to the orthopedic ward immediately. Not long after hanging up the phone, Michael opened the door to the ward. He politely called my parents first, but when no one paid attention to him, he walked to my hospital bed with lowered eyes and asked softly, why didn't you call me immediately when you were injured? I gave him a serious look. Just like the past 3 years, he looked calm, as if nothing had happened. He could always hide his emotions so well. When I didn't say anything, Michael's mother asked sternly, why are you with Sarah? Speak clearly in front of Jenny and your uncle and aunt. At this time, my father spoke first. He looked at Michael's mother and said in a deep voice, Michael's mother, until the child gets the certificate, my wife and I are just Jenny's parents. So don't embarrass Michael. There is no rule in our family about changing your words before marriage. A flash of realization flashed across Michael's face. He pursed his lips, apologized to me first, and then explained, Jenny, I met Sarah by chance when I accompanied my staff to the hospital. She was not in good health, and I was just helping. It was my lack of control that made you misunderstand. When he spoke, his eyes were calm and his speech was slow. He was completely different from the man who was shouting hoarsely in the corridor just now. The anesthetic wore off, and the pain in my wrist began to become sharp. In the midst of the constant pain, I asked him calmly, Michael, you have never forgotten her, right? I looked at him and calmly opened my heart. It is precisely because you know who you love in your heart that you can always remain calm in front of me. Because you don't care, you have no emotions. No. He interrupted me suddenly, his voice even a little urgent. I was stunned for a moment. Looking at his face that finally had a crack, I actually smiled. Look, this seems to be the first time I've seen you have mood swings. He obviously realized this too. He opened his mouth to say something, but swallowed it back. The ward became quiet at some point. My parents and Michael's mother left, leaving only the two of us. He sat beside my bed and wanted to hold my hand, but he saw that one of my hands was wrapped into a rice dumpling, and the other hand was also covered with scratches. Why is it hurt like this? He asked distressedly, wanting to touch it but not daring to. Seeing his appearance, my nose felt sore and I almost shed tears again. Michael, if I had known that there was someone in your heart, I would never have pursued you in the first place. I have always wanted to be strong and have a high vision since I was a child. He was the first person I fell in love with. Before I met him, I thought I would end up alone in my life because I couldn't stand machismo, people who had no self-control, and even less capable people who were worse than me. After falling in love with him, I asked about his past. I know that he was in a relationship that lasted for 5 years, and the separation was very unhappy. Friends said that because of this, he has been reluctant to start a new relationship. I don't believe it. I spent more than a year chasing him and warming him up. The day he agreed to be with me, I thought it was my persistence that finally touched him. In the past 3 years, I have had doubts. But every time I doubt that he doesn't love me enough, I tell myself that this is the kind of character he has. How good it is to have stable emotions. Living a life peacefully is also a kind of happiness. But reality slapped me hard today. Jenny, Sarah is married and has children. She and I are really in the past tense. He looked at me sincerely, his eyes so sincere that it almost made me shake. It's my fault, I didn't give you enough sense of security. But, I really love you. Just as I was about to say something, there was a knock on the ward door. It's Sarah. She was wearing a hospital gown, her face looked even more haggard than before, and her lips were purple, probably because her heart was not in good condition. She ignored the stagnant atmosphere in the room, walked in calmly, and said to me with a smile, I didn't mean to disturb you, but Michael's cell phone kept ringing, and I was afraid that he would miss something important. As soon as he finished speaking, Michael's cell phone rang. He glanced at it and said to me hesitantly, it's a customer. I'll go out and pick it up. As soon as he left, Sarah sat beside my bed. She looked at me and suddenly smiled. I have long heard that Michael has found a girl 5 years younger than him. I didn't expect that the first time we met would be on such an occasion. I pursed my lips and said nothing. Whenever I see her, I will think of Michael's strong hug and those tears falling down. Unexpectedly, Sarah suddenly came close to me, lowered her voice and laughed. Sister, don't be nervous. I'm going to die, and I won't steal anyone from you. My eyes widened in surprise. She continued, Michael told you, I'm married and we have our own families, right? She laughed, and suddenly held her chest and gasped for air. After she recovered, she looked at me meaningfully. Sister, why are you so naive? You can get divorced even if you get married. Moreover, I divorced last year. It's just that Michael doesn't know. I looked at her blankly, not knowing how to react. I really envy you. Her eyes drifted to the window. If I had a healthy body, back then. Before she could finish her words, Michael opened the door and came in. Seeing that we were happily chatting, he glanced at me nervously, and then said to Sarah, the doctor asked you to have a good rest, and go back quickly. Sarah stood up obediently and looked back at me before leaving. Sister, I wish you happiness. After she left, Michael asked me what she had said, and said that Sarah always talked nonsense and told me not to take it seriously. I looked into his eyes and said word for word, she said she got divorced last year. I didn't miss the moment of trance and loss in his eyes when he heard this sentence. Then, he quickly regained his composure and said calmly, oh, really? That was her own choice. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. After that, I never saw Sarah again. Michael moved all his work to the ward and stayed with me every step of the way, being gentle, considerate and meticulous. None of us mentioned what happened that day again. But only I know that I can't get through it. After being discharged from the hospital, I recuperated at home. One day I received several photos from a friend. The friend said in the message, Jenny, I came to the hospital to see someone, and I happened to see Michael there. Do you know that woman? Why is he feeding her? In the photo, Michael is sitting next to Sarah's hospital bed, holding a bowl in his hand and carefully blowing hot soup from the spoon, his eyes focused and gentle. In every photo, his expression is lively, smiling, and distressed. It turns out that he is still taking care of her. During those few days in the hospital, I thought he was with me wholeheartedly. But he used excuses such as taking calls from clients, holding video conferences, and communicating with doctors about his condition to leave me and go to her again and again. Is he tired from taking care of two patients at the same time? That afternoon, I went to our newly renovated wedding room alone. That's where I watched with my own eyes, bit by bit, from a rough sketch to a dream. I have fantasized about every detail of living here with him countless times. But standing here now, there is no joy in my heart, only endless emptiness and sarcasm. I dug out a baseball bat from the delivery pile at the entrance. Then, with my still intact hand, I raised the baseball bat high and used all my strength to hit the table we chose together. Bang! The huge sound echoed in the empty room, leaving only a shallow scratch on the dining table. This is not enough, far from enough. I threw away the baseball bat and went to the tool room to find a hammer. Then, like a madman, I picked up the hammer and smashed it against the dining table, the expensive leather sofa, the photo wall we put together, and the brand new curved TV. I spent the entire afternoon doing this with shards of glass flying and sawdust flying. I don't know when the back of my hand was scratched, and blood dripped down my wrist, but I didn't feel any pain at all. It seems that this is the only way to overcome the pain in my heart. When Michael pushed the door open and came in, he saw this scene, me slumped on the ground, surrounded by a mess, as if I had just experienced a catastrophe. His eyes slowly swept across the room, and I couldn't see any other emotion except the surprise in his eyes. I gasped and asked him, "Aren't you angry?" He walked up to me and squatted down, gently tucked my messy hair behind my ears, and his tone was still so gentle, "It doesn't matter if you smash it. I remember you said that there are some parts that you are not satisfied with and it can be renovated." At that moment, I looked into his eyes and suddenly smiled. Smiling and laughing, tears flowed down. "Michael, stop here." I heard my own voice, as if coming from a faraway place, "I won't marry you." His hand was still on my hair, and he paused for a moment. But soon, as if he hadn't heard anything, he continued to help me fix my hair and said to himself, "If we renovate, we may not be able to make it in time for the wedding. I have an empty apartment over there, and we can move there first." He rambled on about the wedding arrangements, as if as long as he didn't answer, I had never said what I'd just said. I picked up the phone next to me, clicked on the photo sent by my friend, and held it up in front of him. He finally shut up. The room was quiet for a long time, so long that I thought he wouldn't speak again. Then, I heard him say, "Sarah is sick, she has no relatives and friends. I just went to see her." I nodded with understanding, and my tone was so calm that even I felt unfamiliar. "Whether it's for humanitarian reasons or other reasons, I can understand if you take care of her." He suddenly raised his head and looked at me, with a hint of surprise in his eyes, and an unconcealable joy. "But you shouldn't lie to me." I stood up slowly, avoiding the hand he stretched out to help me. "During the days in the hospital, you used various reasons to run to her again and again. If it weren't for these photos, I wouldn't know it until now. If it weren't for Sarah's serious illness, this matter wouldn't have been so easy for me. I would truthfully tell my parents why the wedding was cancelled. As for your home side, you can tell it yourself." After saying that, I turned around and left the wedding room, which was full of messes. I went back to my parents' house and told them my decision. My mother cried at that time, and while crying, she scolded Michael for not being a good person. Dad sighed, his eyes were red, and he said, "Son, parents respect your decision. This is also our fault. We think that by living a few more decades, we can see a person clearly. Unexpectedly, we all made a mistake." After her mother calmed down, she said she would go to Michael's mother to discuss compensation. Michael's family paid for the wedding house, but the decoration and appliances were all paid for by our family. Knowing that I smashed it, my mother didn't blame me, but praised me for smashing it well. "Everything in there is your hard work, and you must not give that bastard a cheap price." That night, I updated a circle of friends with a simple sentence: "The wedding is cancelled, and I will be a stranger from now on." The last post I posted on Moments was on my birthday. The day Michael proposed to me, I chose a photo of him with the most obvious smile and placed it in the middle of the 9-square grid. How happy I was then, how ridiculous I am now. The comment section was full of question marks, and countless private messages came in asking me what happened. I didn't reply to any of them. The next day, Michael's mother rushed directly to my house. As soon as she entered the door, she held my hand and refused to let go. "Jenny, it was Michael who did something wrong, and I asked him to apologize to you. You can make any compensation you want, as long as we can do it." You have been together for so many years, how could you separate just because of such a trivial matter? And I've asked someone to investigate. That Sarah won't live long, and she won't be an obstacle to you. Once upon a time, I was always lucky to have such a mother-in-law who liked me. We have similar interests, she never shows up, and she treats me like her own daughter. I thought it was our connection. But now I understand that the reason why she is so satisfied with me is because I am healthy, have a clean family background, and have good abilities. In front of her, there happened to be Sarah, who was in poor health, but had a firm hold on her son's mind. I looked into her eyes and said softly, "Auntie, I can't compare to a living person, let alone a person who is no longer here. I don't want him to be too lazy to talk to me one day, but will look at Sarah's things and miss her." After Sarah left, no matter who Michael was with, he would be the same. Only in front of Sarah can he feel joy, anger, sorrow, and joy, and can he be a normal person. I don't know how deeply they loved each other, and I don't know why they separated in the first place, but I can feel the unforgettable longing and unforgettable feeling after they reunited. I feel for Sarah, she is leaving this world at such a young age. So I don't want to compete with her, nor do I want to argue with her. Auntie, no matter how much I like Michael, the person I love most is myself. Now that I know the truth, I won't let myself be wronged. She looked at me and was speechless for a long time. Frustrated in love, proud in the workplace. I don't know why, but the business of our studio suddenly improved, and many big companies that were previously unwilling to cooperate with us have offered us olive branches. I was still in the recuperation period, so I had to devote myself to intense work. During that time, my parents told me that Michael often came to see me at home, and even if they said unpleasant things, he would still show up the next day without hesitation. My friend at the studio also said that he often goes there to inquire about my whereabouts. Many of our mutual friends interceded for him. But when I told them the reason for our separation, most of them said they would no longer care about our affairs. But there are still a few who can't figure it out, saying that I'm too cruel and too serious, and that I should give them a chance to explain. I was too lazy to talk nonsense, so I blocked them with one click just like I blocked Michael. I hid in a mountain resort owned by my father's friend to recuperate. There are beautiful mountains and clear waters, few people and tranquility, which greatly alleviated my negative emotions. The very next morning I got there, I just got up and saw a man sitting in the yard. He turned around when he heard the noise, and my eyes widened instantly. "Ethan? Why are you here?" Ethan Joe, the son of the owner of this mountain villa. We grew up together and are childhood sweethearts. But starting from junior high school, he suddenly became my nemesis. If I like him, I will hate him. If I hate him, he will find a way to get in front of me. After graduating from high school, I stayed in Los Angeles to attend college, while he was sent abroad for gold plating because of his poor grades. Later I heard that he had returned to China, but he left shortly after. After not seeing him for many years, I was surprised and happy to see him suddenly. "I'm here to find you." After several years of not seeing each other, he has matured a lot, and his voice has become deep and magnetic. I ran up to him excitedly. "Quick, say a few more words. It would be a pity not to dub your voice." I waited for a long time and he didn't say anything. When I raised my head, I realized that his face and ears were all red. "What's wrong with you?" He took a deep breath and said quickly, "Jenny, I like you." I was stunned. He slowed down his speech, looked into my eyes, and said word by word, "I've liked you since junior high school. I wasn't sensible at that time and wanted to get your attention, but I did a lot of stupid things that made you annoying. I wanted to confess to you in high school, but I heard you tell others about your criteria for choosing a mate. My grades were too poor and I was not worthy of you. I could only study hard, but the time was too short. I still didn't get into the college you wanted to go to in the college entrance examination. In those years abroad, while I was overcoming difficulties and adapting to the environment, my friends at home were keeping an eye on whether you were in love. Knowing that you focused on studying and dismissed all suitors made me happy and sad at the same time. I was afraid that you wouldn't like me either. After graduating from college, I felt that I was barely qualified, so I returned to China. But before I was ready to confess my feelings, I heard that you fell in love with a man. I checked his information and found that he was indeed better than me. I couldn't compare with him, so I left again. Jenny, I really like you. So after I learned that you broke up, I came back. I know that I am not brave enough, and it seems that I am getting further and further away from you with every step. But I still want you to know my feelings." There was a suitcase behind him, and it looked like he had just arrived after getting off the plane. The fatigue on his face and the blackness under his eyes confirmed this. I looked at him, feeling confused. You've been on a plane for more than 10 hours. Are you tired? You go and rest first. We'll talk about other things later. Seeing that I had no special reaction, the light in his eyes suddenly dimmed. Looking at his appearance, I couldn't bear it, so I added, I'm not rejecting you. It's just that I just ended a relationship and have no plans to start again. He seemed to be relieved. It's not a matter of rejecting it directly. I'm afraid that you think I'm unreliable because of the stupid things I've done before. In this way, Ethan also lived in the villa. He accompanied me and took me to ride horses, climb mountains, and see the stars. We worked together as guides for foreign tourists visiting the villa and chatted together around the campfire. One day, a young foreign tourist confessed his love to me in public. I watched Ethan's face darken with my own eyes, and after rejecting him, he put him on the bus back to the city in a strange manner. After he came back, he ran up to me angrily. Jenny, these foreigners fall in love with each other when they see them. You should stay away from them in the future. Seeing his childish and jealous look, I couldn't help but ask him, Ethan, if one day we are together and someone confesses to me in public, what will you do? He exploded as soon as he heard this. Who dares? I have worked hard for so many years to get to you. Who dares to pry into my corner without having a good eye? I asked again, then if you really like someone, will you have a strong possessiveness? Will you want to know where he is and what he is doing at all times? Can you not stand him being too close to other people of the opposite sex? He was stunned for a moment and didn't understand why I asked, but he still answered honestly, of course. Love is inherently exclusive. Anyway, if it were me, I would love to be by your side every day. I looked at him and suddenly smiled. I see. In Michael, those things I couldn't get turned out to be just the instinct of love. On the day the cast was removed, Ethan accompanied me to the hospital. After taking care of it, I hesitated and still wanted to see a cardiologist. Based on the information on my friend's previous photos, I found the ward where Sarah was staying at that time. But someone else was already living in that ward. I went to the nurse's station to inquire, and the nurse told me that patient was discharged from the hospital last month. The doctor said that her condition made it meaningless to stay in the hospital. Calculating the time, it happened to be the days when Michael went to see her for the last time. Ethan walked out of the hospital with me. The sun was very dazzling, and he said to me softly, Jenny, whether that woman is still there or not, it has nothing to do with you. You didn't do anything wrong, it was him who was wrong. I know. But in my heart, there is still a trace of indescribable sadness. Later, I returned to the city and resumed my normal work and life. One evening, I was waiting at a traffic light on my way home from work, and I looked up and saw them. On the sidewalk, Michael was pushing a wheelchair, and sitting in the wheelchair was Sarah. She was thinner and more haggard than she had been a few months ago, but the expression on her face was relaxed and relieved. As for Michael, he had lost a lot of weight and kept staring at her, as if she would disappear in the blink of an eye. The green light is on. Before I started the car, Michael and I locked eyes. He obviously recognized my car, his eyes widened, and he subconsciously took a step forward. But at this moment, Sarah in the wheelchair said something to him. He looked down at her and took back the foot he stepped out. I looked away, stepped on the accelerator, and drove into traffic. A week later, Michael showed up at my door. He was leaning against the wall, looking exhausted. When he saw me coming back, he straightened up and said in a hoarse voice, she left. It was the day we met by chance. I was stunned for a moment, then nodded calmly. So? I'm not familiar with her, so you don't have to go out of your way to tell me. Seeing that he didn't speak, I opened the door and entered the house. Just as I was about to close the door, he reached out and pressed the door frame. Jenny, let's talk. I thought about it and let him in. I took a bottle of ice water from the refrigerator and placed it in front of him. When he saw the bottle of ice water, he smiled bitterly, then opened it and took a sip. He used to have serious stomach problems. During the years we were together, I never let him drink iced drinks and tried every means to nourish his stomach. But now, none of this matters. Jenny, I never thought I would see Sarah again. I really want to marry you and live a good life with you. I believe it. If he didn't mean it, he wouldn't propose to me. Given his personality, he wouldn't. Michael, I don't know what you are like in front of the person you like, but I can accept living with an emotionally stable person like you for the rest of my life. But, I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen you lose control over her, go crazy over her, shed tears for her. I have seen the vivid you. I can't lie to myself anymore. His eyes were red. What if I change it? If I work hard to change, will you give me a chance? I looked into his eyes and shook my head gently. I don't want to. I don't want to compare myself to someone who is no longer here. Moreover, I don't believe you will forget her and your past. He fell silent. You introduced the companies that have recently approached our studio to cooperate, right? He nodded. Just think of it as your compensation for me. Never see you again. I'm afraid that when I see you, I'll be reminded of how stupid I used to be. He opened his mouth, but finally said nothing, held his stomach, stood up and left. The half-drinked bottle of ice water, along with my last thoughts about him, was thrown into the trash can by me. Later, I heard intermittently from friends that Michael went abroad despite his family's objections. His father was so angry that he was sent to the hospital. After he was discharged from the hospital, he directly found someone to take over the family company. His own startup company was also handed over to his partners. And my studio is getting better and better. I was so busy that I never touched the ground, but I also made a lot of money. Ethan completely took over his father's business. He is busier than me, but he always makes time and comes to have dinner with me. After dinner, he goes back to the company to work overtime. One night we sat in the courtyard of his villa and watched the stars. He suddenly talked about how he bullied me when he was a child. As he talked, he became autistic. He said that he had nightmares for a long time, and in his dreams they were scenes of him regretting and crying after marrying another man. I looked at him and suddenly thought of myself crying when he was angry with me in junior high school. Maybe the reason why I was so broken at that time was because I actually cared about him. Because I care, I can't accept that the person I care about the most is the one who bullies me. Sometimes fate is so wonderful. I looked at the stars in the sky and felt the cool evening breeze from the mountains blowing across my face. The injury on the wrist has long since healed, leaving only a shallow scar. And the wound in my heart seemed to be slowly being filled with something. I know that is not forgetting, nor is it forgiveness. That is the end and the beginning. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Marriage is Not the End. If you also have stories you want to share, please leave a message via our email or social media. See you next time.